Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to see all of you and have this opportunity. This is every year that I have this opportunity to come and speak to this class. I'm always quite humbled and quite intimidated by the challenge that I have for trying to bring something that's worthy of your time and attention and worthy of the efforts that you all are doing. I have such a tremendous respect for all of you and your commitment to Christ and your commitment to the future that you're all planning for and the purposes that you have in your life. And I admire that so very much. I certainly hope that what I can share with you over the next couple of hours is something that will be beneficial to you, that will glorify God, and will provide insight that you may not get from some of the normal discussions you have during your time here, but will add some other character and some other points of view for you as well. It certainly is an intimidating time to come here after we just sat upstairs and listened to our brother talk about false teachers. I certainly hope that there's nothing that I say or do today that would lead to that. But I have a number of things to share with you today, and as Bob said, I'm looking forward to an opportunity on Wednesday to come back together. And I think really based on how our conversation today goes, we can dig a little deeper on some things, and also hopefully on Wednesday talk about some practical application of leadership and practices that I have found over the years to be effective and successful for us. Probably appropriate for me to start off with sharing a little bit with you about who I am and why Doug McNary. I'll try and make a quick summary of my resume and my background, and that should help to give you a perspective. First off, I'm a 51-year-old, very worldly guy, and I have had some experiences in my life that I'm very, very proud of, and to be honest with you, there are some things in my life I'm not so proud of. I've been a Christian for 6 years. I was baptized here at Bear Valley in 2006. And the past 6 years have absolutely been the best part of my life. And I have more hope and optimism for the future and eternity than I have ever had. And I look back on the past and sometimes wonder why it took me so long to get to where I am. But I certainly thank God that I am where I am. And thank God that I have an opportunity to look forward to the rest of my life here on this earth, this journey, and certainly look forward to eternity with Christ. What I did in those many years prior, in the corporate world, I spent about 22 years with a company called First Data Corporation. Has anybody ever heard of First Data? Most of you probably have not. First Data was a holding company at the time with a number of business units. The one you would be most familiar with probably is Western Union. I was actually the president of Western Union for about 6 years and managed all of the U.S., Mexico, and Canada businesses of Western Union, basically what we call Western Union North America. Spent a tremendous amount of time throughout the United States and also a lot of time in Mexico and Central and South America, dealing with our customers and our relationships there. Traveled all over the world and did a number of different things. Also within First Data Corporation, First Data is also the largest credit card processor in the United States, actually in the world. Whenever you go into a retail merchant, there's a 60% chance that when you swipe your credit card or your debit card through a terminal, it's actually being processed through First Data. So we own First Data owns all of the systems and all of the networking that really makes Visa and MasterCard work on a daily basis. First Data also owns a number of other smaller business units, and over the years has sold and bought and acquired different businesses. I actually ran mergers and acquisitions for First Data for 4 years, and in a 4-year period of time, spent about almost $4 billion buying different companies to acquire into and consolidate into the First Data business units. During that period of time, probably spent more time at 35,000 feet traveling from one place to another than I did anything else. In my last few years at First Data, I ran the what's called the independent sales organization within First Data, where we have about 6,000 people throughout the world who are selling credit card processing to small businesses and merchants throughout the world. And those 6,000 people, most of them were independent contractors. We treated them as employees, but they were certainly people that represented themselves in the marketplace as an employee of First Data Corporation. So, pretty worldly guy. As I said, spent a lot of time in corporate jets, flying all over the world, living a pretty fast and furious life. I'm sure not too much different from what you would envision in the things you see in Hollywood these days. And it was an experience. But in 2004, a couple of things happened to us. Well, I should actually go back a little bit. Somehow I had this ability to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was in all of those travels. If you recall, back in the 1980s, there was a hurricane in New Orleans, and I got stuck there. In the 1990 sometime, when there was the last big earthquake in San Francisco?
89.
89?
I'm up here.
Yeah, 1989. I was actually on the lower level of the 880 freeway just a couple of hours before it collapsed, and got out of there just in time. But probably one of the things that really impacted me most in life was 9/11. I was supposed to have lunch in the World Trade Center that day. I was at 51st and Park Avenue, and when we found out that the first plane had struck, and that was on a Tuesday, and we couldn't get out of New York until Saturday. We were finally able to get a private jet to get us out of New York. So when you're able to spend those 4 or 5 days when you were in the middle of unknown, what you didn't know what the future was going to hold, it gives you a lot of time to think about your life and your priorities. And then in 2004 was really a big change for myself. Is that my wife Marty, many of you may have met Marty when we were in Sunday worship service and other times. Marty, at the ripe age of 43, had a stroke. And for a few days, I thought I had lost Marty. I thought she was in a vegetative state, and it was a very difficult time. The Lord has blessed us. She has recovered to the point where anyone who had not known her before and did not know her well could not know and understand any deficiencies. But she has a few, but bother her more than anybody else. But the Lord has certainly blessed us with a second chance. And so from that time frame on, my priorities really became getting right with Marty, getting right with the Lord, and getting my life on the right track. And it's been a great journey. It's been a lot. Actually, for the past couple of years, I've done some crazy things, though. 2 years ago, my wife and I, in a crazy mood, decided to buy a ranch. And it was actually a case of, many of you may know Rick and Pam Randall. Marty and our daughter went down and did a cattle drive with Rick and Pam, and Marty came back and said, "Doug, I want to move out to the country." I said, "Yes." I always wanted to live in the country. I was born and raised in Iowa and always wanted to be around that. So 2 years ago, in the middle of 2010, we bought a small ranch down south of town here. It's about a 50-minute drive from here. It's 140 acres. It's not a really big place, but it's a place where I've got a few cattle, which I enjoy, just kind of raising those cattle, and my wife has some horses, and we live a very quiet life and very, very peaceful life out there. And then part of the deal with Marty moving out there was, we can buy this ranch, but she wanted a new house. So I decided to be my own general contractor, and this is the house I've been working on. This has been my passion for the past 2 years. We just finished this house, and you can see the views out here. Actually, this is the view off of the back deck of the house. Horrible. Yeah. I think one of them, I must apologize to you, I just bought a MacBook Air. I've come over from the dark side. I was a Windows guy for many, many years, and this is my first time with an Apple computer. And so bear with me. Some of the transitions aren't quite right today. If it doesn't quite go as smoothly, please bear with me. When you start thinking about leadership and start thinking about your personal direction, this is one saying that I've always felt has always resonated with me. So the secret to your success is the constancy of purpose. It's one of the things I admire about you men in this room is I understand and know that you're here because you have a very clear view of what your purpose in life is. You know where you're going and you know what you're doing. Staying focused on and being consistent with that focus and that purpose in your life can make a huge difference in your ability to be successful long term. So what I hope to do today over the next couple of hours here is spend some time talking with you with that thought of being focused on your purpose. Spend some time talking with you and discussing with you some ideas and thoughts around leadership, the ideas and thoughts around character and values. Spend a little time on mentoring, and then I have some things that are kind of more Doug's unique leadership styles that I think you're not going to necessarily find in the textbook or in other lessons and discussions that you may have, but I think are interesting and appropriate for us. And then hopefully we have some time left over for some helpful processes. And then on Wednesday, if you guys see fit, we'll talk about some practical applications of some of those ideas and actually work through some problem solving together and see how that goes. So leadership. What an interesting concept. There's been more organizations, more schools, more programs developed over the past 10 years to try and define and to try and put parameters around this idea of leadership than I think there's been in all of the history of man. It's really leadership in the business community has become the buzzword. And a lot of the reason why I believe is because it's very difficult to find men who are qualified, men and women who are qualified to lead. And there's reasons for that, and we'll get into some of that. But what's interesting to me is all these words you see on the screen right now, those are all the words that you would find in Webster's dictionary for the definition of leadership or synonyms to leadership. I took every one of those directly out of the Webster's dictionary. In my mind, there's a missing word. In my mind, the biggest word that's missing is to inspire. A quality leader is someone who can apply their heart and their mind to a passion or a purpose and can inspire others to follow them, to urge those people to apply their abilities and their skills towards a purpose. So inspiration, a leader's ability to inspire can make all the difference in the world. Now, what's fascinating to me about leadership is it doesn't necessarily mean charisma. Because believe me, if it was charisma, I never would have had an opportunity to be a leader. I am not a tremendous public speaker. I'm not the eloquent one with the right words at the right time. What it takes in my mind is a heart. A leader with good qualities, a leader who can inspire people, has a heart. And he loves people, and he loves the purpose that he has set his heart on. So I believe the best definition for leadership is to inspire. Before we start talking too much about other leadership qualities, it really behooves us to spend some time talking about who. Because when you think about leaders, the concept is you're leading someone, right? So for you individually, and for any organization that you're a part of, you really have to spend a lot of time talking about the who. Who are the people that you're trying to lead? Now, many of the things we'll talk about today, we're going to talk about them in the context of organizational leadership. I believe that many of them also apply individually as to individual leadership, leading yourself. So, for example, in our corporate day, we used to spend a lot of time talking about who our stakeholders were. You know, we made the list, said it was our investors, it was our customers, it was the communities we did business in, it was the vendors that we had contracts and relationships with, and we had our list of all the stakeholders that were important to us. take it for yourselves. As a student at Bear Valley Bible Institute, have you clearly defined, written down on a piece of paper, who are your stakeholders? Who cares whether or not you're successful over the 2-year time period or whatever time period you are here at the Bear Valley Bible Institute? People care. Somebody is a stakeholder in your success. And you should make sure you understand who those people are. Maybe your sponsors, maybe your home congregation, maybe your families. It certainly is the instructors here at Bear Valley Bible Institute. It certainly is the members of the Bear Valley Church. People care about your success. People care about whether or not you get the work done that you need to get done, whether you get the training that you need so that you can go out and successfully do what it is you purpose yourself to do in the future. Once you've identified that list of who your stakeholders are, either as an organization or an individual, it's very important that you understand what do they need. So, as a student, what do your sponsors need? They're giving you money, right? They're providing you with the sponsorship, the support to get you through this time period at Bear Valley. Have you talked with them and asked them what they need? And what's very important on that, by the way, is don't assume. Don't make an assumption that you know what your sponsors need. Sit down and talk with them. Have a conversation with them, a loving conversation with them around, I appreciate so much what you're doing to support me. What is it you need in return? What is it that you expect from me? Make sure you clearly understand what that is. Same thing with your families. Same thing with your instructors here. If you haven't had a conversation with Bob yet about what he needs as your instructor for this class, sorry, Bob. You're going to get 16 guys coming at you and saying, what do you need, Bob? And you may have already clarified that at some point in time. But it's very, very important that you understand who cares about your leadership, who cares about your behaviors and your purpose in life, and specifically, what do those people need from you? Organizations have to behave the same way. We have to identify, as a church, Bear Valley Bible Institute, Bear Valley Church has to make a decision and understand who are the stakeholders for Bear Valley Church. We actually went through some strategic planning processes with the elders here over the past few years. That was one of the exercises we spent time on. Who is it? Who cares? And we talked about, obviously, the members. We talked about the students as being a part of that. We talked about the community at large around the surrounding Bear Valley Bear Valley Church community. And certainly, one of the stakeholders that's very important to us is the lost. And what do we need, and what do those people need, and how do we achieve those things? And we actually did some interviewing and some discussion with those different stakeholders to share that information with the elders as they talk about some of their strategic planning. Then you have to ask yourself the question, when am I a leader? Looking around this room, I can tell there's probably a wide diversity of backgrounds and experience that all of you have. I'm sure that many of you have had leadership experience and been in a defined leadership role in the past. I would argue with you that we all have, and we all are, at different stages in our life. So, right now in this room, there's some leaders in this room. You probably know who they are. That typically in your discussions, there's the individuals who take a dominant position or a dominant role, who are more outgoing or outspoken than others, who people look to for direction. You'll find that within most all organizations, anytime you get a group of, I'll tell you a quick story. I used to work for a CEO of First Data. He was a tough guy. He was a pretty aggressive guy. And I worked for him, actually. I was a direct report to him longer than anyone else in the corporation for many, many years. And people used to come to me oftentimes and say to me, Doug, how do you succeed? How do you work with this guy? And one of the rules of thumb that I had was he always respected when you challenged him, but never challenge him publicly. You can challenge him privately all you want, but never take him on publicly. And the definition of public is if there was a third person in the room, you were in a public environment. And I found great success in that, and that he liked and appreciated that if I had an issue with the direction that he was taking, or had a thought or a comment, if I pulled him aside or I scheduled a separate one-on-one meeting, and that included making sure the door was closed so that his assistant couldn't hear what we were talking about, because that would be the third person in the room. Because you would never win the battle if there was a third person in the room. It happens in this room, in this environment as well. Anytime you are in a public environment, you have more than a couple people in the room, there's natural leadership that develops. And you guys know what that is.
When you say that was one of the things that you learned, was it you tried it the other way and got bad results, or you made that role going into it, but I'm not going to let it be the other way?
I witnessed it many times when I tried it the other way. Yeah. Witnessed many careers be lost because they chose to take them on in a public forum. And they may have thought they won the battle, but they always lost the war.
Okay.
That makes sense. And it's, that was his leadership style. And you can make your own judgment as to whether it was successful or not. Once you understand that basically we're always in a leadership position, you have to ask yourself, what are my actions as a leader? How am I behaving? And how are my behaviors being interpreted by those people that I'm leading? And we've all heard the old saying, actions speak louder than words. Here's a good example. I think I've used this example in the past. A couple of years ago, actually, now I guess it was. I was teaching this class, and a couple of days after I was teaching this class, my wife and I had stopped in over at the Costco store. And my wife had gone into the store, and I was actually sitting in the car waiting for her. And I was sitting there, and directly in front of me, across the parking lot, 3 of the fellow students, Bear Valley students at that time, they came out of Costco and had their purchases, and they were placing them in their car. Now, Costco, you don't have any bags or anything else, right? So I witnessed and watched every single item that they purchased and placed in that car. Fortunately, there wasn't any whiskey or anything else in there, but they had no idea that a member of Bear Valley Bible Institute was watching their actions. They had no idea that somebody was there. So the challenge for a leader, and this happened frequently. I had many cases where you have several hundred people working for you. They often knew who I was and recognized me in public forums, but I wouldn't recognize them because I just didn't know everybody that well. And people would come up to me and say, "Hi, Doug, I work for you." And I had no idea. So as a leader at a public forum, you've always found times and opportunities where people were watching your behaviors, watching your actions, and how critical it is that you're consistent with those actions. That those actions personify the message that you're sharing with others. And certainly your words. I liked this quote. Anybody ever heard of Pearl Hurd? Don't worry, I didn't either. But I like the quote, words, handle them carefully, for words have more power than atom bombs. And certainly we can turn to the book of James and learn about the dangers of the tongue, right? And how important it is that we are careful with the words we choose in every leadership role that we're taking. One of the reasons why I feel so intimidated by teaching this class is I feel very concerned about the words that I use and the words that I choose to communicate the thoughts and the messages to you. The same with leading the Lord's Supper, with leading a prayer service for worship service. I feel a tremendous responsibility for making sure that the words that I use are appropriate and lead people in the right direction and are supportive of and bring glory to God, and don't do anything other. what's interesting about for all of us as individuals, for every human being, our actions are important, our words are important, but those things all become a product from our thoughts. And I think that we all know that one of the hardest things for all of us to control is our thoughts. I don't know about you, I find times, we all find, I don't think we all find this. You ever find those times when you're studying the Bible, and you just finished reading a couple of chapters, and you're like, you have no idea what you just read? You have no clue. Because your mind and your thoughts were somewhere completely different at the time, and you were not wholly focused on your study of God's Word. I find that I get frustrated with myself when I do that, but I find that it takes tremendous discipline for me and for all of us, I think, to focus our thoughts and to focus our energies on those things that we should be thinking about and clearing our minds of those things that we should not. And I certainly like the quote of change your thoughts and you can change your world. So the important thing as a leader is the message I'm trying to get across is we're all leaders, and we're all leaders all the time. And what's important is we must be consistent in all of our actions, in all of our words, and all of our thoughts all the time. It's a tremendous, tremendous responsibility. And I circle back to what I started with. It's important that our actions and our words and our thoughts have purpose. It's so easy to wander. It's so easy to lose track of what it is that we're here for. What is our purpose in life? What is our purpose as a leader? And we must keep those things within focus at all times. If you guys have any thoughts or opinions about it, I would love to hear it. Yes, sir.
I think we need to keep in mind too that when we're in the public view, their eyesight on us is much better than we're in a group setting. If you're out in the public and, like you were saying, you noticed the students coming out, that caught your eye quicker than what they would have been inside a group setting, say a classroom or in a church building or something like that. So a person's eyesight is better fixed on you when you're in the public.
People are much more attuned to picking you out of the crowd. So
That's right.
Yes, sir.
You may get to it later, but the standards are not always equivalent in a leader versus a non-leader, a preacher versus a member, an elder versus a member.
Expectations are high, and tolerance is low. Particularly for the role that you men are choosing in your life. Expectations are very high. I often admire, certainly you men, I admire Bob and Neil and men who are in that leadership role within Bear Valley. It's a tremendous responsibility for them. And it's not, take Neil Pollard, for example, it's not the 20 minutes that he's in the pulpit every Sunday morning that's his responsibility. It's the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Does he walk his talk? Okay? Does he live a life according to what he says? And is it something that people can trust him? Right? And he's being watched and observed 24 hours a day. And we see every day, unfortunately, we see every day in the media of some leader who has stumbled, some leader who has fallen, who has lost their focus on their purpose, who has not made sure that their actions and their words and their thoughts are consistent with their purpose, and has lost their direction. It's a huge responsibility. How many of you have kids? Any grandkids? Actually, today is I have 6 grandkids, and today is our grandson's birthday, his first birthday. You guys may see Shauna and Jeff always sit with us at church. Jeff's the really tall guy, really, really tall guy.
Shauna.
Yeah. And today is their son Dallas's first birthday. It's a fun day. I remember now, I was actually taking care of the other grandkids while they were having the baby while I was preparing for this class a year ago. But the point I was trying to get to here is, think of the role you have as a leader in your family. Think of the responsibility you have to your wife, to your children, to your family, extended family and loved ones, particularly with the purpose and the passion that you've chosen for your life. The responsibility you have to them to make sure that you walk your talk, that your actions and your words are consistent with your thoughts at all times. It's a huge responsibility, huge. I see our 5-year-old grandson, Tristan. He's at the tremendous age right now where he mimics and replicates everything. Okay? Whatever his father does, he wants to mimic it and replicate it exactly. Huge responsibility on our son, Chad, to be the father image that he needs to be at such an important age, that 5-year-old boy. We all have that huge responsibility. So the question that this leads me to is to say, if I need to have consistent actions, I need to have consistent words, and I need to have consistent thoughts, and they're all geared towards my purpose in life, how do I do that? How do I make sure that I fulfill these things? I believe that starts with assessing your own character. And particularly in a leadership role, it's the character that you portray as a leader. And I like this quote, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. So how many times have we seen that? Right? It's one thing to have the fortitude to deal with adversity, to deal with challenges, to deal with problems in your life. But take it to the other end of the spectrum. How many times have we seen the challenge when a person takes a leadership position, is given tremendous power and authority, and they abuse it? They forget who they were. They forget their values. They forget their principles, and they get caught up in their self-promotion, their self-advancement. I will admit, in my prior life, I suffered from this from time to time. You get a small case of big dealitis when all of a sudden you have 6,000 employees listening to and hanging on every word you say about the strategy and the direction for your company. It's hard not to do that. But the true character of a man is really tested when you give him power, when you give him authority. I think even more so than when they face adversity. And there's a lot of different words that can be used to describe character and describe the kind of person you are. This is something that I would hope that people would use to describe the kind of man that I would like to be, and the kind of man that I try to aspire to. Certainly, one of the hardest ones when you're in a position of power is to maintain that humility. How difficult that is. When you think about that within the church, you see that happen sometimes. You see that happen with people who will be given roles or responsibilities, maybe even people who take on an eldership role. But sometimes their personalities change. They're not the same guy they were before they became an elder. Many of you probably will have an opportunity, hopefully will have an opportunity to serve as an elder someday in your future. Guard yourself and make sure that you check your character on a regular basis and make sure that you don't allow yourself to get caught up in that feeling or sense of authority and responsibility.
Yeah, just with the comment you made, check yourself. How do you go about that? Because my question would be, as long as you're not too far removed from it, let's say your litmus test, your reality is not gone. But you get too far out there, what you realize is not real.
staying close to God's Word has always helped me keep a perspective on what's really important and what the priorities in life are, and that it's all about Him, it's not about me. And reminding myself that on a regular basis has been very helpful to me over the past few years, particularly. Having a strong wife who always helps me stay in check too is good as well. She doesn't allow me to stray too far from that. But it's to be more serious, one good way to check yourself is to make sure you surround yourself with trusted associates and people who you can trust to give you candid and honest feedback. You have to ask for that and be open to it. I used to use quite a bit of a saying I used to use in the business world quite often was, I never liked to have people in my organization who were what you call yes men, right? Who always say, oh yeah, you're right, Doug, that's great, Doug, oh right, yeah, rah, Doug, you're right. I used to have a saying that said, if two businessmen always agree, one of them's unnecessary. The value of surrounding yourself with people who have the courage to be candid, to be honest with you, and to give you true feedback is tremendous. And as a leader, particularly within a church organization or whatever role you may take, it would seem to me, I'm sorry, I'm pushing the button. I think it would be very, very helpful for you to identify individuals within your organization, within your circle of influence, and develop a relationship with them. We're going to talk about mentoring in a little bit here. Develop a relationship with them where you can go and get that honest feedback, that candid feedback, and you can count on them to come to you and help you check yourself when you need to be checked. It's the value of friends. Sorry, Rob.
Well, do you have a consistent, obviously if you want consistency in action, you need to have a consistent way of checking yourself. Do you have review times that you'll get with these people, or how do you know when to check yourself?
I'm going to talk both about,
Okay.
I'm going to talk about how to review yourself and keep yourself in check, and kind of give you some process where you kind of think through your own character
Okay.
and identify those, as well as a process for establishing mentoring relationships and people who can give you some of that candid feedback. This kind of puts it all together, I think, is this saying, I like this, and it's really, all this we've talked about, your thoughts, your words, your actions, your habits, that all becomes your character. And at the end of the day, your character is what really drives your destiny. It's your character that makes you a quality leader. It's not having the eloquence and not having the ability to profess whatever it is you need to profess in an eloquent way. That's valuable and a tremendous asset, and I admire the men who can do those things. I tremendously admire them. That's not what makes a leader. What makes a leader is what's in here. It's what's in your heart. The best way that I found for myself to keep myself in check is I'm going to share with you my personal values. And I would encourage you that if you have not identified what your personal values are and written them down on a piece of paper, you should do that. Has anybody done that? Does anybody have their values written down on paper? I would encourage you to take your values, take some time. And I established my value, I rewrote my values right around 2006 when I was baptized. I sat down and rewrote my values because life changed a lot for me in that time period, over that couple-year period of time. Take a lot of time to assess yourself and to think about what's really important to me. What are the values in my life that are uncompromised? Write them down and keep them somewhere, some way where you can always have them and check them. I have had this little guy for probably 20 years. This is my briefcase. This is all I typically used to carry in the business world, is a briefcase. And I've got little note cards in here. We can talk about that later. And here I have my written values. I carry them in my briefcase. Today I have my values in here, and typically every Sunday, and or other days, I carry a copy of the values for Bear Valley Church of Christ. Now, if you guys have seen these or not, there are little cards up on the welcome table up in the lobby. We worked with the elders to establish the values for the eldership and for the Bear Valley Church of Christ a few years ago. And we keep that so we can keep this close to our mind. If you establish your values correctly, values really should become something that's really timeless. It's not something you change on a regular basis, unless you change. Unless you make major changes in your life and major commitments to your purpose or your passion in life, then it may be appropriate that you change your values. And I would tell you I changed. In that 2004 to 2006 time frame, I did a lot of soul searching to figure out what kind of man I wanted to be. I changed. And around the 2006 time frame, I rewrote my values. Today, my values say this. It's been this way since 2006. My thoughts, my words, and my actions will always be consistent and glorify God. God is number one. My thoughts, my words, and my actions will always be consistent and be one with my wife. Marty is my rock, and there's nothing I do or say or think of that I wouldn't share with her openly and be with her openly and make sure that everything I do, she comes first. God comes first. She is right there with him and priorities in my life. We have 5 kids. My wife, Marty, and I have 5 kids, and we now have 6, soon to be 7 grandkids. She's got me beat by 1 now.
Trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Me too.
So one of my values, one of the things that's most important to me is that my thoughts, my words, and my actions will always be consistent and build a legacy through my children, not for my children, but through my children. It's important to me that one of the challenges Marty and I have had is that I have not always been a great role model for my children. I was the big corporate executive guy, right, flying all over the world. I was never there for them when they needed me. I was always gone. There were years when I spent 200 nights a year on the road. I was away from home. It's tough to do. I've got a lot of catching up to do, and one of my focuses in life right now is to really work as much as I can with our adult children. Our youngest is now 23, our oldest is 32, and work with them. Unfortunately, only one of them is baptized into Christ. So we've got 4 other projects, plus their spouses and others.
Are they all local?
No, they were up until recently. Actually, we were feeling pretty good up until about 2 years ago because all 5 of them were local. And within the past 2 years, it's kind of we have 1 in Oregon, 1 in San Francisco, and 1 in Dallas. And the other 2 are here. Actually, our son Chad, our oldest son Chad, helped me build the house. He and his family are living on the ranch with us. So we have the ability to influence Chad and his wife and our grandson and granddaughter quite a bit there. But it's the important thing for me here is in my values is to build a legacy through my children and helping to make sure that they're the kind of people that they should be as well. And then, of course, my thoughts, words, and actions will always be consistent and be of the highest integrity and greatest humility. Again, going back to hopefully everything I do is to the glory of God. So I would encourage you that one of the best ways to check yourself and to maintain and to check your character and keep yourself focused on your character, your thoughts, your words, your actions leading to your purpose is to create your values and use them as a tool to help you. Yes, sir.
Sorry, asking my question. When I was working with Northwestern Utah, they had us, this is one of the exercises we did, and we reviewed them once a week with somebody. Are you suggesting that we at least incorporate it into our daily routine for ourselves? Is there a chance that could become habitual where it wouldn't mean as much?
Yeah, there is a chance. There's risk of that. I'm going to talk about how I do it. Don't want the words to become empty words. I find it's pretty hard to do it when you have your purpose in life well defined and where you're trying to get to and where you're trying to go, it's pretty hard to let these become empty words because it becomes a good measure for you. It is an issue. It's an issue for individuals and for organizations. The Bear Valley Church of Christ values says, with prayerful recognition and authority of the sovereignty of the Almighty God, we will always endeavor to, 1, bring glory and praise to God, 2, to save souls and keep them saved, 3, to be biblically balanced, spiritually sound, and Christ-centered, 4, to edify one another as a spiritual family, and 5, to treat all people with love, compassion, and respect. That was put together by the elders at Bear Valley. What we do, what I talked with the elders of Bear Valley, and it really applies to you individually as well, is this becomes your guideline for decision making. So for the elders, when they're thinking about a new program or a new initiative, or they're dealing with a difficulty within the church, they have a stack of these. If you've ever been in the elder room down front, if you've ever been in the elder room, they have a stack of these on the table. And we encourage them, and they do a very good job of it. Our elders are pretty amazing guys. They do a good job of checking themselves with each of their decisions to make sure, is this decision that we're about to make, is it consistent with our values? Is it keeping us on track? Are we doing the right things? So these values become kind of like your rule book, and your way to check and make sure that I'm doing the right things as I go forward. One of the ways that I apply my values and those things is my daily exercise. How many of you guys have worked out today? How many of you will work out before the day's over? I strongly encourage you, as an old man, now 51 years old, wishing I would have done this all the time. I found that I'm getting better and better at it. It doesn't take much. 30 minutes, get out of the chair. Go find a way to go get 30 minutes of exercise. Get away from that computer. That computer just sucks the energy right out of you. I know it does. I'm sure you feel it. There's times when you feel almost trapped, like that computer's just sucking you right into that screen. Amen. And you can't get away from it. Right? Force yourself to take 30 minutes. Just go for a walk. Just get out and get some fresh air. Do something. Get some exercise. Elevate your heart rate and clear your mind. All of a sudden you'll come back and you'll find that you're so much more effective and so much more thoughtful and be able to advance your purpose, your passion so much better because you've had an opportunity to clear your mind. I'm not trying to be Jack LaLanne here or anything like that. I strongly encourage you that exercise is an important part of your life.
No one knows who that is except for Dad. The juicer.
You guys know who Jack LaLanne is, right?
Yeah.
He's red.
Yeah, he is. Is he still alive? He just died last year. Yeah.
While doing one-arm push-ups at 95.
What's important, what I find is really important is that 30 minutes of exercise time, you have an opportunity to really manage your head, manage your brain. Don't let that brain wander during that 30 minutes. Use that brain to use that 30 minutes to really try and help your brain have those powerful, positive thoughts that you need to help you get through your day and to help you achieve your purpose. So throughout that workout time, you say to yourself, I'm a great preacher. I'm a great evangelist. I'm a great missionary. Whatever your purpose in life is, define what that is. Make it affirmative. Be aspirational in your thoughts. But think about that purpose that you've defined for yourself and say, I'm that kind of man. I am this kind of guy. This is what I am. Therefore, because I'm that kind of guy, today, I'm going to do this. It doesn't have to be big. It might be great. You might have a situation you're dealing with where you say, I am a great husband. And today I'm going to make sure I tell my wife that I love her. I'm going to show to my wife that I love her. I'm a great father. And today I'm going to make sure that I follow through with my kids and I do what I need to do as a father to be the kind of father that they need to be. Be specific, have purpose in your thoughts, and it should all tie back to your personal purpose in life as well. So I find, back to your question, Rob, I think for me, you gotta be careful that your values become empty words. They don't mean anything to you. But if those values are in line with your purpose and your passion in life, and you use them as a way to kind of, as a roadmap to keep you on track, and then you have this kind of a process each day where you bump yourself up, believe in yourself, find yourself to be the strong man that you are, and then set a small goal, just one small goal for you to achieve that day. It kind of helps you feel progress, feel that positive momentum moving forward towards your purpose in your life.
How many would you have in one set? So let's say you're out walking and you figure out, or today I want to focus on the great preacher. Would you just do one idea, or okay?
I typically focus on the one thing that's really on my mind the most in that day.
Do you have a list to choose from? I don't know. That's silly, but I'm trying to think. How would I organize this for
Today
future use?
I did a recumbent bike thing for 30 minutes today, and I spent that time thinking about this presentation.
Okay.
And I kept reminding myself, you're an experienced leader. You've been here, you've done this, you've had these experiences. Believe in yourself, have confidence in your ability to do it. So today I'm going to be a good leader. I'm going to communicate with you some good leadership ideas that hopefully will have an effect on your life and bring glory and praise to God. That was the conversation I had with myself.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the same 10 things on repeat. It might be just something random of the day.
Just what's important to you today.
Okay.
Tomorrow it's going to be I'm a good carpenter because I got to go fix something in the house. Any other questions or thoughts about the whole idea of character and a process or a way for you to manage and keep yourself focused on it?
You said you've been a Christian about 6 years now?
Yes,
Okay. Before you was a Christian, was there a transition to where you had leadership based on your business and leadership at home? Once you become a Christian, did it change? I mean, you said your values changed.
Yes.
How did it affect you, and how hard was it to take your Christianity to your business?
Well, I lost my job over it.
Okay.
If that helps you.
Well, you chose the right
You
one.
too?
The first day.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say I lost it over that, but it was certainly, I made a choice in life. Actually, it got to the point where in 2002, a company asked me to move to California to run a company that was based out of California. Marty and I moved to California and left all our kids here. They were adult kids. They were able to be on their own. And we commuted back and forth. Marty and I were living in California, and every other weekend we were coming back to Denver to be parents. We put my career, my corporate job before my family. My life was out of bounds, completely out of bounds. It was terrible. I made more money in those years than I ever imagined I would have made. I was never more miserable than I was in those years. It was a terrible, terrible life. And it was wearing heavy on us, and then Marty had her stroke in 2004. By middle of 2005, we were back in Denver. I went to the company and said, I don't care. You can fire me if you want to fire me. We're moving back to Denver. For another year, I did the reverse commute. Marty was here in Denver and was recovering and being a mother and a grandmother and getting all those things going. And I was gone. I was out in California for 4 days a week, running a company in California and coming back every weekend. And it was a difficult time. And I finally said to the company, I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to find something either here locally in Denver or give me a package. And I got the package. And it was the best thing that ever happened in my life.
Now, was that because of becoming a Christian and having different values according to God, or was that because of just stress and family issues?
I think it was at that time when I was making those decisions with the company, it was more stress and family issues. That led me to finding Christ. Coming back to Denver, Marty has been she was born and raised in the church. So Marty has always had very strong and deep faith, and she and her brother have been very influential in my walk. But certainly it was making that decision that this has got to change. Because, it's, all that materialistic stuff, it wasn't important to us. We made that priority to change the decision to change priorities and do the right thing, and Christ stepped into my life. So, it's.
Did you retire when you left there?
Oh, I called it retirement. Some people call it lazy, but.
Okay. I mean, so what I'm saying, you didn't seek employment after that?
No, I am actually probably, now that I've spent the past 2 years building this house, that was really a full-time job.
Okay.
And it was a great experience, but now I'm going to find something to do. We're
Okay.
actually.
You want to teach leadership at Bear Valley? I guess they would tandem?
The pay is great, I can tell you.
What'd you say?
I said the pay is great.
Oh, yeah.
No, what I do, I'm not sure. Actually, we helped our son Chad and his family start a great business.
Living on support is fun, though. I gotta say. What?
He must have this sugar.
But you said they started a business, though.
They started a small business, and we're doing some stuff online now that's pretty interesting.
Cool.
I'm learning that when you step out of the business world for a few years, like I have, when you come back, it's a bit of a shell shock. I'm amazed at how much technology has changed and how much people's behavior has changed as part of it. And it's really it's an interesting one. Wednesday, if you want to spend some time talking about it, I have some thoughts about it. But technology and the way people are behaving today creates a tremendous challenge for you as evangelists, but it also creates a huge, huge opportunity, because you have ways and ability to reach many, many people much faster and much more effectively if you do the right things. It's absolutely amazing. Has anybody ever used the Google keyword tool? You know how, if anybody does any online marketing? It's sometimes fun to do. It's free. Just if you just Google on Google keyword tool, you'll find your way to the tool, and you can key in any word and see how many times somebody has searched that word in the past month, right? And you can get trends and different things. Go search Jesus. See how many times people search that name. There's a lot of lost souls out there that are looking, and they're looking at Google. So how do you as evangelists take advantage of that opportunity and do something with it? That's a whole other discussion.
Doug, you said you stepped away for a couple of years and you came back. It sounds like when you were in the world and you were in business and you were flying all over the place, was it more of a boiler room type atmosphere then, or now that you're stepping back into it, are you seeing it more like that now? You know what I mean, like the Fast and the Furious, and you don't care, it's just about the bottom line, or is it more like that now, or was it more like that then?
Oh, it was, back then it was very much like that.
More like that then than now?
Yeah. I wouldn't,
No, I don't mean for you, I just mean business in general.
oh, business in general?
Yeah.
I guess I haven't gotten far enough into the corporate world yet. What I stay abreast on and speaking with my friends from the past and seeing what's happening. And I think we all saw a lot of it last week. There's definitely a movement away from the core values that made this country successful. And there's a lot of behavior and a lot of activity out there that just make me shudder when I think about it. And there's things that are going on in the corporate boardroom which I would never have imagined could have ever happened in this country. There are behaviors going on in people's lives that the sanctity of marriage and the priority of family has never been at a lower point than I think it is right now. And that's a sad, sad thing. But that's probably why Jesus is being Googled so many times. It's an interesting discussion. I'm going to move away from process here for just a little bit and talk about what I think are a couple of other important things. First one is the concept of trust. Trust is the greatest single asset that a leader can have. It's the hardest asset for a leader to ever obtain, and it's the easiest asset for a leader to ever lose. I actually worked for a long time. I worked with a very prominent public relations firm out of New York. Have you guys ever heard of Ogilvy and Mather? They were at one time the largest advertising firm in the United States. David Ogilvy, who always had a very great passion for public relations. I actually built a strong relationship with him when I was running Western Union. I was running a company who was allowing Mexican immigrants to send money from the United States back to Mexico. And we were advertising to them that they could send $300 for $10, right? What we didn't tell them was the foreign exchange rate we were using was costing them $49. We got sued. We had a class action lawsuit against us, and ended up having to settle that class action lawsuit. I was the star witness and had to take the stand, and it was a difficult time, to say the least. But David Ogilvy was one of the people that I spent a lot of time with, and he taught me a lesson back then that I think is very appropriate for all of us to always remember. And that is, when you do something good, when you do something nice for somebody, when you do something to help someone else out, when you do a good thing, that person typically is going to remember that for the next 8 days. Now, by the way, think about that. It's not a very long period of time, but do you wonder if that has anything to do with why God tells us to remember Him on the Lord's Supper every seventh day?
Amen.
But if you do something bad, people are going to remember if you hurt them, if you do something to wrong them, people are going to remember that for 8 years. That's the challenge of trust in leadership. You can do all the great, wonderful things you can in the world, and you can be the greatest guy, but you stub your toe one time, and you're done. It makes it very, very difficult for you to ever recover. So the saying is, character is made by many acts. It takes a long time to build and establish your character, and certainly the reputation of your character, which follows your character. But it can be lost in one single mistake. It's tough being a leader, because that's a huge amount of pressure. It's tough being a leader in your profession, in your chosen passion, because you can develop the strongest relationship with your constituents, your stakeholders, and you can stub your toe one time and you're done. And you guys, I'm sure you've seen that within the Brotherhood. You've seen that within industry and with business every day. Open the newspaper, you see it happen every day. So it's important for us all to make sure that we have our light shine in everything that we do. Now, there's different degrees of stubbing your toe, right? There's some things that are just unforgivable, although thanks be to God that we have a way of finding forgiveness. But for certain number of things, there's society and your stakeholder may never forgive you and may never let that go. And certainly may have a hard time forgetting it. The Art of Recovery says it's not if you make this mistake, it's a matter of when you make the mistake. And there's a lot of things. You may say the wrong word. You may have inappropriately made a comment to an individual or a comment about an individual. You may have misspoke in the way you've said things. It happens to me all the time. I stub my toe and say the wrong thing at the wrong time. What's not important is the fact that you made a mistake. What's important is what do you do about it? The worst thing, a leader particularly, the worst thing that a leader can do is to wash it over and just move on. If you make a mistake, fix it. Go back and find a way to fix that mistake. Whoever it is you hurt, whoever you did that bad thing to, go to them personally and confess, I made a mistake. I feel terrible about it. I'm remorseful. I wish I wouldn't have done that. Please forgive me. And you have to figure out what it is you have to do. You may have to have that conversation with multiple people, or you may have to do it publicly. But whatever you got to do, you got to make it right. As a leader, never, ever, ever wash over a mistake, because they won't forget it. It's not for 8 years, according to the ability. They will remember, though, the strength of a man who says, I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. They will remember that, and they'll put a plus sign in your category that says, you know what, that guy is strong enough to stand up and say, I made a mistake, and he did something. We all make mistakes, right? But it's who's man enough and strong enough as a leader to go out and say, I'm going to fix it. How am I doing on time?
You got about 45 minutes.
We talked about this a little bit before. I'd like to spend a little more time on it because I found in my career over the past several years, this is really something that's been very beneficial to me. It is to ask yourself the question, who is my mentor? Does anybody have a defined mentor today? Does anybody have more than one mentor? If you don't have a mentor, you need to think real hard about identifying and finding a mentor. Is there anybody in here that is acting as a mentor today?
It started last week.
Let me talk a little bit about being a mentee, so to speak. As a mentee, you need to identify the persons who you think can add value to your life, and you need to ask them to be your mentor. It's a formal process. Don't just kind of casually say, hey, by the way, man, we need my mentor. Will you go have lunch with me once in a while and talk to me about this problem or that problem or whatever? It's got to be a formal process. Formally establish a mentoring relationship with someone who you respect and identify as a role model in your life. Be able to describe for them why you want them to be a mentor. What are the attributes, the qualities, the strengths of that individual that you admire, that you want them to help you with improving that area of your life, or that part of your leadership. You got to ask them to be honest with you, even if it hurts. It's one of the hardest parts when we talk a little bit about being a mentor. It's one of the hardest parts about a mentor-mentee relationship, at least I found this in the corporate world, is they often became very superficial and very kind of, hey, you're a good guy, pat you on the back and send you on your way, and that was about the end of it. A good mentor is someone that can be very honest with you and tell you things that nobody else is going to tell you. A good mentee asks for that feedback. Asks for it. As I said, make it formal and establish regular meetings. Don't do it as just, hey, we haven't gotten together for a while, let's go have lunch. Agree with the mentor. Can I get together with you on a bi-weekly basis or a monthly basis? Or, you know what, Bob, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I really need your help here. I'm struggling with this issue in my life. Can we get together once a week and I want to share with you what I'm doing and get your feedback? Agree to formal, established times when you're going to meet and implement a mentoring relationship. I used to dread this all the time, to get together with a mentee, and you're acting as a mentor, to get together with someone and have no idea what the topic of discussion is going to be, and they ask me, well, what's your advice? I've got this situation in my life, what's your advice? And you have 30 seconds to formulate your thoughts and ideas around this. It could be a very monumental influence in this person's life. It's unfair to the mentor. It's really unfair to you as the mentee as well. In respect to your mentor, before you get together with them on a regular meeting, send them an email, give them a list. Say, hey, Bob, I'm really looking forward to getting together with you. Here's the 2 things I'm dealing with in my life. I really would like some feedback and some thoughts from you about these 2 areas in my life. And so Bob can think about those and sleep on them for a day or 2, formulate his thoughts and ideas around them, maybe ask some other people who are influenced by you in their life and get some feedback where you wouldn't necessarily get directly from other people. And you'll have a much better quality relationship with your mentor than just a candid, let's get together for 30 seconds. Or, let me give you 30 seconds to think about an answer. And you want to ask questions of your mentor, ask them to give you, here's my situation, here's what I'm doing, how would you handle the situation, and get them to give you their feedback from their experience. That's the whole reason why you do it. Very important in my mind to a mentoring relationship. One of the most difficult things that a mentor often has is they don't have the time. Everybody in this room would love to have Bob Turner be their mentor. Bob doesn't have time. Bob can't be everybody's mentor. Bob has to be very discretionary and very selective about the people that he agrees to mentor, because it would be unfair for him to say to all 16 of you, I want to be your mentor, because he can't do you justice. Right? Whoever you choose as a mentor, respect their time, keep your time with them brief. It may not be lunch, it may just be, hey, we'll sit down for 15 minutes and talk about this, and get out of their way. Don't burden your mentor with too much.
If you were going to do this in a professional relationship, not necessarily maybe somebody at the school, could you do it over the phone, or is it?
Yeah, you can. I think you can. It depends on your topics, certainly.
Okay.
Right? There's some things that, as you know, are better handled face to face, but there's no reason why you can't have.
Okay.
You can even do it through email for that matter. You can,
Okay. Make sure you're growing.
whatever you and your mentor are comfortable with. Yes, yes.
This may sound really odd, but have you ever fired a mentor? And the reason I ask that is I'm just thinking through my own life, and I've got a guy that I really respected and I really valued his opinion, and he was a cattle guy, and that was my business, and I respected his opinion. But I've noticed in the past probably 10 years, he's gotten very crass and
Become a grumpy old man?
I wouldn't call it that, but yeah.
My wife tells me that quite a bit. I don't know if I guess I can't say that I've ever fired a mentor. I've certainly had mentoring relationships that have terminated mostly because of change of events in life and things that have happened. It seems to me that it's a fairly graceful thing to kind of walk away from, unless you had expectations on his part that you were going to come to him on a regular basis. Just kind of let it slide. You love him. I'm sure you still love the man, and he's still
Absolutely.
Somebody you have a lot of respect for. But there's really nothing. You're not getting the value out of the relationship that you didn't want.
I want to add just something in regards to this based on the experience, since you have talked about mentoring in the years past, and obviously there have been several students that have gone to different teachers. And initially the thought is, yeah, I need a mentor. And so they'll say, will you be my mentor? And I really would encourage everyone to give more thought very seriously to the responsibilities of the relationship before you ask. Because what my experience has been is guys will come very quickly and they'll say, will you be my mentor? And I'll say, okay, you need to give some thought to what was discussed and how that's approached. And they'll say, yes. And then we'll meet one time and they'll send an email saying, well, I'd like to talk about this. And so we'll talk about it. And then they're busy with school and doing homework and their activities. And then it just kind of falls to the wayside. So while it's good to approach that relationship, just approach it very seriously and recognize that it takes on a responsibility in that relationship, and not just if it works out we can get together once in a while kind of thing, but be more candid about how it is approached and the way it needs to be approached.
It needs to be treated as a job for both people. It becomes a job description for both parties. It's not, if you want them just to be your friend, Bob, will you be my friend? You know? Let's go be friends.
Horrible friend.
That's different. You know, there's a lot of times when you can just have good friends who can give you good feedback. A mentoring relationship is a job. It's a responsibility that the two of you have to agree to share it.
Think of scripture, Proverbs, that says, with many advisors, victory is assured.
Yeah.
I remember as a young Christian, it was, I asked for, I look at Paul and Timothy. Timothy didn't go to seminary. He was trained directly, hands-on.
Right.
Paul, he would see, observe, and walk with him, just like Jesus trained the disciples, the apostles.
Yeah.
Having a discipler helped me a lot because, it says baptize them, but teach them to obey everything, and that takes time.
Yeah.
Walking with them, and I think I learned about different
Great one.
people God brought into my
Great.
life to
Great.
disciple.
Absolutely great one.
Are you going to cover, like, if you want to mentor someone, how you go about approaching?
Next week.
All right.
I have two questions. Is it okay to have more than one mentor
Yeah, you should have,
for specific strengths? I mean, if somebody's in a leadership role in religion.
exactly, the roles and responsibilities, you need to define what those are, and be careful, because, again, I'll go back to being a mentee is a job. Signing yourself up and saying, I want 4 or 5 mentors, that's a lot of work. You're busy, you got a lot of school going on, a lot of things going on. You don't have time to manage a mentor relationship. It's part of the job is managing a mentor relationship. Respect them enough to dedicate your time and energy to building that relationship.
And
So
one other,
I've never, in my personal life, I don't recall ever having more than one true mentor. I've had people I've always looked up to and asked for advice and things, but I've never established a true mentor relationship with more than one person at a time.
okay. Also, when you're at the top, mentors are at the top.
Well, there's only one guy at the top.
I agree 100%. I meant in the business world, who did you turn to?
Oh, you find within the business world that
That was a good answer.
You got you.
You got it. I got the bin.
you find in the business world that you'll have, I'll a good example. I had a woman, her name was Kim Patton. Kim was our chief financial officer. Very bright, very talented woman. And I asked her to be my mentor. We agreed to it for a 6-month period of time. And she helped me tremendously. She was my peer. She was the CFO for the company. I was running Western Union at the time. Western Union was in a lot of challenging things. We had a lot of things to sort out. I needed her to give me some candid feedback about what I was doing and my leadership and the things that I was doing. It was a great relationship, but she was a peer.
Okay.
So it doesn't always have to be somebody above you.
Somebody outside of the situation.
It's somebody who has insight and strengths that can add value to your life.
Okay.
Ron Cunningham was a mentor for a very short period of time. But with him, I learned that it was great because his lifestyle met my lifestyle. And he'd been through it and he progressed past it. When you look for a mentor, do you look at, do you know their background kind of first? Do you know what they've been through or what you're going through? Is it going to match? Or is it going to be something completely different that they're not going to be able to help you with in a lot of your troubles that you're going through?
Yeah.
If you got a mentor that's say he's a family man and he's done this his whole life and you've been over here, then maybe he's not going to be able to really help you too much with what you're going through.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You have a responsibility as a mentee to to know what you expect from the mentor.
Right.
As you'll see, as I said in the next slide, the most important thing as a mentor is to make sure you know how you can help that person. If you can't define how you can help the mentee, don't do it as a mentor.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So your guy you're talking about, if he doesn't have a clear understanding in his head on how he can help you, he should take the responsibility of saying, I'm not the guy.
Yeah, I can't mentor you through these aspects of your life because I have no idea how to help you.
Yeah, because the worst thing you want to do is sign up to be a mentor and then let the mentee down. You can do tremendous damage.
Okay.
Right? I have expectations that Bob Turner is going to help me with this problem in my life. Bob doesn't have time for me. Bob's not interested in that area of my life. Bob has no passion for it. He has no sincere concern for me and my success in that area of my life. It's a bad mix. It's Bob's responsibility to say, you know what, I love you, man, but I'm not the guy for you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Talk about being a mentor. As I said, it's Bob's responsibility to make sure it fits. As part of being a mentor, you're supposed to be the big boy, right? You're supposed to be the guy that has insight and direction. Take the job and say, it doesn't fit. Don't be afraid as a mentor to say no. The success of a mentor-mentee relationship is that the mentor loves you. He cares about you as the mentee being successful. The mentor's motivation for getting involved in the relationship in the first place should be completely out of an act of love and care for you as the mentee. If you're doing a mentoring, if you're taking on a mentoring role because it makes you feel good, this guy thinks I'm smart and I can add some value to it, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Does that make sense? It's not about me, the mentor. It's all about you, the mentee. And certainly for a mentor, it's important to set reasonable expectations. Rob, I'd love to help you out, but I'm only going to be able to give you a little bit of time, and I want to keep it focused in this area of your life or this area of responsibility. Let's not get carried away. Which, by the way, leads to set boundaries around your ability. Right? So, unless you are a trained marriage counselor, don't start giving advice to your mentee about their marriage. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble. Right? Make sure you're qualified to give the advice. You have the ability to actually lend value to the mentee, and put some boundaries around the area that your relationship is going to focus on. And don't go beyond your abilities as a mentor. That's danger zone right there. Big danger zone. I'm not qualified to give you marriage advice. I'm the last guy that's qualified to give you marriage advice. So if you want some marriage advice, go find yourself another mentor, because I'm not the guy to do it. Remember, your role as a mentor is to coach and advise, not to do the work for it. I find that with my kids all the time. Have any of you guys taken kids through college yet?
Through or in?
In through college? My kids found out that I'm pretty good at editing papers. Right? And that they can give their paper to Dad, and it always comes back a lot better than when I gave it to him. The problem is I let him get away with it. I let him get away with giving me junk. And next night I found out I'm writing college papers instead of my kids writing papers and I'm editing. Right? And I was a terrible disservice to the kids more than anything else. Sure, it took a lot of my time and energy. I did it out of love. But it was a terrible disservice to the kids because they need to learn to write papers. Right? Your mentee needs to learn to solve their problem and do their thing themselves. Coach them and advise them that do not do the work for them. Right? Or somebody would have told me that about 6 years ago. The greatest way, what I found in a mentoring relationship is the best thing you can do as a mentor is lead the witness. Don't tell them what to do. Ask them enough questions, and ask them questions in the right way to get them to tell you what they're going to do. Does that make sense? Help them with your job as a mentor is to help the mentee with their critical thinking, to help them with their solving their own problems in their life, finding their own solutions, coming up with the right answer themselves, and you lead them in that right direction with your wisdom and experience. But don't give them the answer. Help them get to the answer. That's one of those. Whenever I've experienced that, it's kind of an aha moment where you just keep asking people the questions and never mind. I know what I got to do. they figured it out. That's a great feeling when you can do that. And as we talked about earlier, you gotta be completely honest. Sometimes that's hard. I had a young man he was actually from Mexico City. And he was a Mexican national, and he was working for the company. And he got it in his mind that the company had discriminated against him. And that he was ready to file a lawsuit against the company for discrimination. And he and I had a mentoring relationship going. He was not working in my area, my organization at the time, but he came to me and he was just all fired mad, and he was ready to sue. And I was thinking, police, sorry, you know what? This is not their problem, it's your problem. And he didn't like it. He was not happy with it. He got very upset, very emotional. 2 days later, he came back and gave me a hug and said, I love you, thank you very much. That's what I needed to hear, was somebody to just tell me to grow up. So sometimes you got to do that. You got to be honest with people. As difficult and as painful as it may be, you got to do it. As a mentor, you have to expect results from the mentee. If you're not getting results, if you get together with the mentee and you give them advice and direction, or you help them get to their ideas and their strategies, and then 2 weeks later you get back together and say, how are you doing on that project? Well, I've been busy, had other things going on, I just haven't made any progress on it. Kill it. Just, say, buddy, if this relationship isn't helping you, then let's not waste each other's time. Kill it. And the last one I think on here is really important, which is every mentoring relationship, kind of goes back to what you were talking about, should have a term and termination. Hey, let's agree to do this for the next year. Let's agree to do this for the next 6 months. But have a term to your relationship as a job of mentoring a mentee. Don't let it go on to perpetuity. You can always renew it. You can always extend it and say, hey, this is good. We're both finding this to be valuable. You're helping me a lot. Let's extend it for a little bit longer. You can always renew and extend it, but have a finite term that you're agreeing to the mentoring relationship for a period of time.
Are you mentoring anybody right now? In person? I'm not asking so that you'll mentor any of us, but I'm just curious.
I guess if you could call it this, I am spending a tremendous amount of time in mentoring a relationship with our oldest son. He's starting this online marketing business. He's knocking the cover off the ball, but he's getting into all kinds of things and starting up a business, managing a business. He's hiring employees now and trying to figure all those kind of things out. So
Are you learning a lot as a mentor?
Oh, yeah.
And is that typically the case?
When you get a good quality mentoring relationship, it is such a rewarding experience because it's challenging you as a mentor as much as it is the mentee. Because it's challenging you as a mentor to think about how can I be a quality leader? How can I make sure my actions and my words and my thoughts are all in line with helping this person to achieve their passion in life?
When we had this course in the Air Force, they taught us also as the mentor to look out for mentees and approach them for building a relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. We probably all have in life people who we can see are good people, their heart's in the right place, they just need some coaching to help them get their head around what they're doing. Stepping out and offering your mentoring is tremendous. That's a loving Christian thing to do, right?
How do you approach that?
A lot of times it's pretty easy. I would think it'd be pretty easy. I guess I'm trying to think if I've ever done it in that context. But to go to someone and pay them a compliment and say, hey, I can see you're passionate about this area. You've got all the skills and the tools to do this. By the way, I did this in my life. And I had this experience. If I can help you, I'd love to help you. Those kind of things.
So wouldn't be necessarily building on you build on good rather than saying you need help. I guess that's how I've heard it.
Because I don't think I would want. If I saw someone who was just not the right fit, right? They're doing something, they have a passion in life, but they're just not the right fit for that job. I don't think I would want to mentor them. I would probably not even broach that subject. I would rather go find someone who, this guy's cool, this guy's got some passion, he's got some energy, he's got the talent to do what he's doing, he's just never been there. He's never driven down the roads that I've driven down. Let me see if I can help you out. That's when mentoring becomes fun, becomes rewarding. Any other thoughts on mentoring? Like I said, I would encourage you all to go find a mentor. It can't be Bob. Go find somebody else.
What,
In fact, I would advise students in the institute. I don't think you should have an instructor as a mentor. It's too close to the flame, so to speak.
Bob says,
He paid me to say that.
what if, let's say you're mentoring a couple people already, and somebody says, hey, listen, I'm not saying this is the case, maybe in the future. Somebody came up and said, hey, I'd like for you to help me with some stuff, and you just don't have the time. Do you try to put them in touch with somebody else, or what do you do?
Yeah, I'm certainly if you have someone who you could recommend, but you're much better off just saying, I love you, man, but I don't have time.
Okay.
Don't set yourself up for expectations that can't be fulfilled, and that's a prescription for failure in my mind. To be a mentor for more than one or two people at a time I don't see how you can effectively do it. That's a huge responsibility. In a good mentoring relationship, you're signing up for kind of like fatherhood. You're signing up for their life. You're signing up for nurturing and holding and protecting and caring for that person. That's a big responsibility. Don't take it as just being a casual, like I said, if it's going to be a casual thing, let's go be friends. That's great. Let's go have a cup of coffee and talk about it. But don't sign up for it unless you're truly committed to giving it everything you got to be a good mentor. When you do that, it's so much fun. It's so cool. You see great things happen. Okay? I'm going to have a little fun here real quick and take you through a handful of Doug's leadership styles. And these are some that I've put these in. You guys have probably read books, or you may have them as part of your curriculum talking about different styles of leadership. My experience in the business world, there's a few styles of leadership that you don't necessarily ever find in the textbooks, so to speak, or you find them in the Harvard Business Review that they talk about this style or this way of leadership. Some of them, what I'm going to tell you, are some that are probably in there, but I just call them something different. First one is the informal leader. Probably the most influential and most important and most dangerous leader in any organization is the informal leader. Every organization has one. It has nothing to do with org charts, has nothing to do with reporting to relationships, has nothing to do with scope of responsibility. It has everything to do with personality. You've probably all been in those organizations, and particularly in nonprofit organizations like a church. You're going to find that informal leader is a great asset and a very dangerous area that you need to, as a leader in an organization, you need to identify who that informal leader is, and make sure you are attentive to what they're doing and what they're saying to make sure that it doesn't derail what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. At the same time, you can oftentimes use that informal leader to accomplish tremendous things in an organization that you can't do yourself. They can be your greatest cheerleader and your greatest supporter, right? They can help move things forward, or they can be your biggest challenge. So make sure you ask yourself, by the way, am I an informal leader, and what kind of influence can I play in this group? And how can I have a positive influence on this as an informal leader? But also, as a leader, make sure you understand who the informal ones are in the organization. We always had the employee meetings. You always had that one or two employees who you knew they were always going to ask questions. And it wasn't that they really wanted to know the answer to the question. They were trying to find the gotcha. Right? I gotcha. They were going to ask that question that you couldn't answer. Just be careful of it. One of the best times I ever had in my life was a time when I was playing a role of a lieutenant leader. And I took it in the approach of, it wasn't my job to lead and run this organization, but it was my job to make sure I did everything I could to help the formal leader of the organization find success. It's really fun when you take on the role and responsibility to help a man be the best he can be and to lead an organization. It's a great experience. So you, in your whatever role you may take in the future, think about yourself as a lieutenant leader, and what are the things that you can do to help the elder in the church, or elders in the church be successful, to help the preacher be successful, to whatever job you may have, to help the boss be successful. It's a very rewarding experience to be a lieutenant leader. I use the example of Aaron being the mouth for Moses, right? Moses was uncomfortable, and by the way, as leaders, a good leader always surrounds himself with people who offset his weaknesses. Those people he surrounds himself with to offset his weaknesses, the good ones are good lieutenant leaders, because they recognize that this leader's got a lot of strengths and a lot of assets, but this is one that he's not as strong at. I can really help him. Let me help him out. So Doug is not a great public speaker. I'm a good public speaker. Let me help Doug with that, and let me help him deliver his message to people in every way that I can. That's what Aaron did, right? I should say in all times, almost all times, you can be a good learning leader. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the mentoring thing, is ask the leading witness questions. Being a manager and being a boss is when you tell people to do something, right? You go and you say, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. Being a good learning leader is, so we got this problem, what do you think about it? How do you think we should solve this problem? How do you think we should move this forward? What do you think the outcome of this program is going to be? And you never give the answer. You let them sort it out themselves. You lead the witness to get to the point where you want to go. Does that make sense? It allows people to feel confidence in the decision. It allows people to feel confidence in the leadership, that they understand it now because they've had a chance to voice their point of view and their opinion. And they own the solution much better than if you tell them the answer. Yes, sir.
Have you ever been in that process of like leading employees to the solution that you thought was best and actually you were 100% off?
Where I was wrong?
Well, I mean, let's say like I'm leading you down the path I think is correct, and halfway through I realize, you're probably right and I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened to me a lot of times. Because, particularly in the corporate world, in the leadership role, the higher up you go in the organization, the less facts you get, right? All the facts are down in the organization. They know where the customer service problems are. They know where the business is messing up. They know where we're not delivering where we're supposed to. They know where we're wasting money that we shouldn't be wasting. But nobody ever wants to bring it to the top because they don't want to be the bearer of bad news, right? Shoot the messenger kind of syndrome. So the higher you get in an organization, the less you know about what's really going on. But if you do the learning leader and you go to the people and say, so how can we save some money, or how can we get better at this area of the business? And you sincerely ask people those questions, they love to tell you. They're not going to volunteer because they don't want to look like the bearer of bad news, the shoot the messenger syndrome. I've always believed in the lonely leader. And the lonely leader is the concept of when something goes wrong and there's a problem, it's nobody's fault but yours. So only leaders fail when something goes wrong. And whenever there's success and there's the business or the organization accomplished something, it was the team that won. probably one of the things I've noticed, particularly in the contemporary times here, and you read the news and the press, used to be, in my mind, that when there was a problem in an organization, the leader stood up and manned up and said, you know what, it's my fault, it's my problem. But more and more we're seeing finger pointing and, oh, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. The CIA didn't tell me what I was supposed to know, right? There's a lot of examples, particularly in the modern day, in our political world, of people who are trying to push the problem off onto somebody else and not take the blame. That's terrible, terrible leadership. Absolutely terrible leadership. If something goes wrong, you're the leader. Get those broad shoulders out, buddy. You got it. Yes, sir.
I've been here for a little over a month. Just relocated and from the East Coast, and I was yesterday's message was very impacted, but also impressed that Neil took the lead and he accepted responsibility for his lack of evangelism, the lack of growth. And,
It takes a lot of strength for a man to stand up and say, you know what, it's my problem. I blame myself. That takes a lot of courage for somebody to stand up and say, the organization has failed, this issue has failed, I blame myself. It takes a strong man to do that. We need more strong men. The servant leader, we all know the best example of the servant leader in the world, right? And certainly, the higher you go in an organization, the more you need to invert the pyramid, so to speak, and realize that you work for the people and you work for the organization. They don't work for you. You're there to serve them and to help them and to be there to support them. You're not there to be rewarded, so to speak. One of my favorite ones also is the do-nothing leader. This is when you know you're doing a good job. When you're a good do-nothing leader, you're doing the right things. And I always like the saying that a shepherd doesn't eat the grass, he oversees the flock. It's not your job as an elder to clean the kitchen and scrub the floors and lead singing every Sunday and do all that work as an elder. It's your job to encourage, to inspire people to step forward and to take those responsibilities. I would tell you that within Bear Valley Church of Christ, they've struggled so much with this problem. Loving Christian men, the elders of our church are loving men, and they work unbelievable hours and do unbelievable things to keep this church going and to help this church be successful. And they're doing things that they should be delegating to deacons. And they should be inspiring men to step forward and to take those responsibilities and achieve those things. And instead, they're out there literally rubbing the kitchen. It creates tremendous burnout. It creates tremendous. Becomes very easy. Actually, I had a situation where I was helping some of the elders here, and one of the guys we were working with came up to one of the elders and said, "Well, I need this, and this solved. So, Mr. Elder, I need you to go talk to such and such person to solve this problem." And I was standing there and I said, "Time out," because the elder was about to walk away and say, "Okay, I'll take it. I'll go talk to this person." The deacon was trying to put the monkey on the elder's back. And I said, "Time out, Mr. Elder. You need to say, 'Thank you very much. Would you please go tell him that you and I talked and I agree with your position, and you communicate the message to this individual and let me know if I need to get involved.' But don't ask, Mr. Elder, don't take the responsibility, because if he would have taken the responsibility, the deacon could have sat back and said, 'I don't have to do anything for another couple of weeks. I'm good.' Right? So as a do-nothing leader, one of the important things you do is don't let people put the monkeys on your back. Make sure people own their responsibilities and they're inspired to accomplish the things that they need to accomplish. What was Chuck's last name?
Clayton.
Chuck Clayton. If any of you know Chuck Clayton, Chuck Chuck was in the class a couple years ago when I brought this up, and he caught me off guard because he was a truck driver. I didn't realize that. Have any of you ever driven an 18-wheeler?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
But when you're driving an 18-wheeler and you got several thousand pounds of weight coming down the highway,
Yeah.
where are you looking?
Way up.
You're looking way ahead. You're not looking at the car right in front of you, because if a problem happens with the car in front of you, you can't do anything about it anyway. Right? You're gonna wipe that guy out. What you're looking at is the problem a quarter of a mile up the road, and planning your best approach to that problem a quarter of a mile down the road, not what's right in front of you. So a good leader is a truck driving leader, and a good leader is thinking about where I'm going right now, and the direction I'm taking this business, or the direction I'm taking this decision. Am I setting a precedent that a quarter mile down the road is going to get me in trouble? Right? If I move into this lane and I take this position, here's a good example. I got an employee who just cheated for $20 on an expense report. He stole $20 from the company, and he violated, I did this. He violated company policy and tried to expense $20 that he wasn't allowed to expense. I fired him. And I got criticized for firing a guy over $20. But I said, how can I go to the employees and say, it was only $20? I couldn't do that, right? You can't do that. So this guy actually went to my management and my management's management and tried to get his job back. And finally, I talked and got the management to agree, and they supported me in the decision. But you can't allow somebody to just cheat a little bit, because down the road it's going to haunt you. It's going to get you into bigger trouble. So be a truck driving leader and think ahead that the decisions you make today, what are the influences and the impacts that they're going to have on decisions you may have to make in the future.
That kind of goes with eldership. If they just allow a little bit of worldliness to get in, it may be just a little bit, but down the road, who's it going to influence?
Perfect example. Perfect example.
Just for that particular scenario, when you're dealing with people like that, that his first time doing that, or is this something that, okay, you just nipped it right then?
It wasn't, I mean, he was one of our best sales guys. He was.
And it was a blatant on
It
purpose.
was a blatant on purpose. I had one sales guy who got so creative, he was dating a travel agent, and he had her making up airline tickets and then canceling them and giving him the copies. And he was filing expense reports saying that he was traveling to cities to do activities, and he was going fishing the whole time, never went to the town. And so we were paying him all the expense money to reimburse him for the expenses. And he was, he was out fishing. I mean, that's an egregious, and there was no decision there, right? He's gone. But I had a guy who literally just was padding his expense report and put $20 on there. And had to let him go. And he was an outstanding sales guy. But that's when you're a truck driving leader. So those are some of the kind of leadership styles that you probably, like I said, you're not going to read about them in the textbooks, but I think they're very important. And when you think about your role as a leader, you got to think about be situationally aware of your circumstances and apply the right leadership behaviors to the situation. We got 5 minutes here. We got less than 5 minutes. Maybe I can just do a setup on this, and we'll figure this up on Wednesday. I wanted to spend some time and talk with you about a process for organizational leadership. And this is when you get into a leadership role, particularly in a church, you have to fight a challenge that every organization has that I oftentimes call false starts and good intentions. How many times have you been in an organization, particularly in churches and other organizations, where you put together the great program of the day, right? And you put together Think Souls. I think we're doing pretty well with Think Souls, actually, but it's a good example because I keep seeing it on the back of everybody's computer. But you think about the program of Think Souls. It's, people can launch it with great passion and great enthusiasm, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And then next Sunday comes around, and we're doing some things. Next Sunday comes around, we're doing some things. Next Sunday comes around, big souls. Next Sunday comes around and I think pretty soon it just kind of falls away, right? It's a tremendous problem within every organization. Corporations, we used to have total quality management and PQN, or qualitativity, and all these different programs that we would launch to try and improve the quality of service for our organization. And it all comes back to basically the same thing. We just got to identify our purpose, identify our passion, and fix it. And stay passionate on it and stay focused on it. I can take you through a process that I found very successful. That there's a lot of different textbook methods out there, and they put different names on the same thing. That's kind of the fundamental process. That if you're put in a leadership position, say in a church or an organization, and you need to solve a problem, here is a method you can use to go through and solve that problem, and try and solve it in a way that is long-lasting and effective longer term. So if you want, I can do that on Wednesday instead of today, and then we can try and talk about some other practical applications. Of all the stuff we talked about today, is there anything you guys would like to spend more time on and dig deeper into? Anything you feel would be more rewarding? Just
I think that it's always, life moves forward, but you learn from reflecting back,
Yeah.
hindsight, and I think what would help is the longer you live, mistakes, regrets you make, it's like a ball and chain that you've got to struggle and deal with all the time, and I think rather than pitfalls,
okay.
especially dealing with character flaws, shortcomings.
Okay. I have plenty of mistakes I can tell you about, and lessons I've learned from them. Okay. Well, I hope my time has been effective for you and has been beneficial, and like I say, I hope that it's all to the glory of God and gives you some support and some help in what you're doing. I admire you all for your efforts and your passions here, and I wish I had the strength and fortitude to do the things that you guys are doing. And if I can ever be of help to you beyond this little session, don't hesitate to call.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.